I've done a few videos now about making content for tablets like the iPad with tools you might not think of as mobile development tools like Captivate. For example, in my last video, I took a Captivate project, published a Flash file, converted it to HTML5, bundled it with PhoneGap, and put it as a native app on an iPad, and that was not too bad of a process. The only problem with it is that you have to be an Apple developer to make native iPad content, no matter what tool you're using. And it's $99 a year for an individual developer and $299 a year for enterprise developers. So, albeit a good solution, people who are just playing around with some of this mobile technology have a lot of hoops to jump through in order to actually get something working. So I wanted to show another way to create content, and I'm going to be using Captivate to do it because I think that's kind of a creative way to do it, but I want to make note that this just involves HTML. It just involves web development, and I'm going to make an offline website and basically create a web page that doesn't require an internet connection to be viewed on an iPad. Before I get into that, I do want to mention that I'll be using that same HTML5 converter for Captivate. So if you come to labs.adobe.com and you scroll down, you can download that right now. Again, this tool is Windows only. It's because this is just a preview of what Adobe's sort of working on. I would hope that this tool would be baked into the next version of Captivate. There hasn't really been anything announced about that, but one would hope that we have this tool built into Captivate, and at that point, of course, it would be cross-platform. It would work on both Mac and Windows. But for now, this is only going to work for Windows users who can download this tool, or Mac users who have a good friend that has a Windows computer and can convert the content for them. So I'm going to start out in Dreamweaver. Before I get to anything super fancy with Captivate or anything else, I want to do a very, very simple example of what I'm doing, and really just so you can see what's happening. And as I said, this is just straight web development. There's nothing Captivate specific about this other than the little image I'm using. Here I have a really simple web page, index.html. You'll see it here in my Dreamweaver site, and then I've got this header image, which you're seeing on screen, in the same directory as it. And I want this to be an offline application in Captivate. So before anything, what I'm actually going to do is upload this to a server. So I'm going to put these two files on our blog.easelsolutions.com web server. So they're uploading right now. There they are. And I'm going to jump over to my iPad. So on my iPad here, I'm going to open up Safari. And I'm going to go to the right page, which is, as I said, blog.easelsolutions.com/CP. And here the page loads up. Very simple web page, just an image and some text. And I'll keep this page live. This is going to be the same URL that I'm going to use for the final version that you'll be able to go to on your own iPad and test out. Now, Safari has kind of a cool feature on the iPad where if you go to bookmark a page, which I'm going to do right here, I'll bookmark it, and I'm going to say make home screen or add to home screen. And if I click on that, it's going to ask me what I want to save this as. I'm going to leave it as Captivate. I'm going to click add, and it actually adds an icon on my home screen, and it looks like a real application. You can see some of the other applications I have. It looks just like it. It's got kind of a default logo or default white shape, so it doesn't look all that cool. But if I open it, you'll see that it actually is like a browser shortcut. So it's sort of the iPad's way of allowing you to bookmark a page and have it treated just like a real app, but it opens up the website. Now the only problem with this is if I go back and I turn off my Wi-Fi, what's going to happen when I try to go to this bookmarked page is I'm going to get the classic, hey, you need the internet, you can't view this. So, albeit kind of cool that you can make a website look like an application, it's not super functional if you don't have the internet. And so I want to make this into an actual offline application. Now, as I said, this can be done to any HTML page. The whole key is that you tell this file what needs to be downloaded and available offline. So in Dreamweaver here, I'm going to make a new file here. Really doesn't matter what you choose. I'm just going to make a new file, and then I'm going to delete everything in this file. I am going to save this file into my simple site in the same directory as my HTML, and I'm going to call this Captivate.manifest. Now, it doesn't matter what you call this, Captivate, cache, whatever, but as long as it's a .manifest file, that's the whole key right now. So I'm going to click Save, and you'll see that file is now created. What we need to put in this file is we're going to start it out with the words cache manifest. This is going to tell the browser that this is a manifest file with all the content in it that we need. And from here, I'm basically going to list what I want it to cache. So I'm going to put a dot and a forward slash, which means look in the same directory for header.jpg. If you want to be real good too, you can list the index.html file, although because that's the default file, it will be cached by default. Now, there's a couple extra things I need to add into here. I like to put this at the top. I'm going to put a pound sign, which tells the browser to ignore this line, that this isn't an actual file, but I always put a line in here, version, and whatever version number you want. The reason is a week from now, if you update this image, this header file, and you upload that new image, well, you want to tell the iPad that, hey, there's a new asset available, you should download it. So by changing some text in here, that's why it doesn't really matter what's in this line. If you change anything, it will update and download any assets for that website. So it's our way of kind of telling the iPad that, hey, there's new content. Finally, if I'm developing and I forgot to put a file in here, I'm going to get that error message from the iPad saying I need the internet. So I'm going to add in this little network keyword, and I'm going to say star. This basically says allow anything else on the page to just go without internet. So in other words, if there's some image that I forget to put in here, I won't get the error popping up on the iPad. It'll just not include that image on the page. Of course, it won't look good, but it will keep it from erroring out. So I've now created this manifest file. One note here that this is part of HTML5. I'm currently doing the iPad version of it because offline caching isn't completely agreed upon in the HTML5 specification yet, but vendors like Apple have implemented kind of their own version, and this is a version that WebKit. So this will work actually in Chrome or Safari. So this will change a little as HTML5 becomes more finalized and the specification is done, but this is sort of the iPad specific version of it. Now I'm going to go back to my index file. I'm going to go to my HTML page. I'm going to add a manifest keyword in here, and I'm going to put in the path to that file. So Captivate.manifest, because again, it's in the same directory. So I'll save this file. Now I actually want to do one more thing, and I've got a little snippets file that I'll copy paste into here. I'm going to add in another piece of metadata. The iPad has all kinds of little metadata variables that you can put in here. I'm telling this that I want it to be a mobile web app. And you'll see what this does in a second. It's going to make it display full screen and give me some extra capabilities. So I'm going to go back to my server here. I'm going to upload these two files that I changed. Once they're uploaded on the website, I can go back to my iPad. What I'm going to do first here is I'm going to go back to my settings. So here's my settings. Turn on my Wi-Fi. I'm then going to go back to my browser and refresh this page because I needed to pull in that new cache.manifest file or captivate.manifest file. There we go, page is refreshed. Now, just for the heck of it, I'm going to tell this page that I want to add you to the home screen. I'm going to click add. I technically don't have to do this again, but I want to go through that process. And actually, I'm going to delete the old version so we're not confused by it. So there's my little shortcut on the desktop. When I go to open it, of course, it launches, but notice right now that at the top of the screen here, there's no browser Chrome. I don't see the back forward buttons or any of that stuff. And that's because it's running as a mobile web app with no Chrome. It's still running in Safari, but there's just no browser Chrome. Now here's true test. If I turn off my Wi-Fi again, and go back and try my app, notice it starts up. I don't get that error saying that this page requires an internet connection. And if I really test it, just for any of you who think it just might be cached normally, I'm going to kill the app so it's not even running now. When I go to it, it works again. So that's basically the setup for any website that you want to be available offline. Is you need to have a manifest file, and in that file list every single asset that's in your whole website, and from there tell your HTML page where that manifest file is and tell it to behave as a mobile web app. Now, where does this come into play with Captivate? Here I have a Captivate project, and I've already published it. You can see it's a very simple page, simple little demo, not a whole lot there. But I want to make this into an HTML page, just like I did before. So I've opened the HTML5 converter for Captivate that you can download from labs.adobe.com. I'm going to load in my Swift file. It's going to be an iPad, or size for an iPad, and I'm going to hit convert. Now this is going to go through and convert everything that's Flash into HTML5. It's now finished converting. If you notice, I've got a subfolder here with all the assets in an HTML page. If I look at that HTML page, here's my app. Now, a known issue with this converter is that the first slide, the image, if there's a transition, it won't show up. So I recommend starting with a blank slide to begin with, and you won't see that blank image show up initially. I've got a little quiz in here, which we'll be able to take as well. Now that I've got this thing converted, what I need to do is make this an offline application. So initially, I'm just going to make this easy on myself. I'm going to take this directory here. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to paste it a level higher here so I can find it a little easier. I'm just going to save this as HTML5 output. Secondly, I'm going to come into it and I'm going to rename this first file, call it index.html. Oops. And the only reason is that way I don't have to type in that file name in the browser. I can just put it in the same directory and it will work. Now the last thing I need to do is I need to actually edit this HTML page and attach a cache.manifest file. And the only problem with this cache.manifest file right now is that, of course, there are a lot of files in this project because of all the files that are needed to make this work in HTML5. So you can see there's 179 files. I would have to list 179 files in that cache.manifest file. That would be a nightmare. So in a true computer geek way, I wrote a little program to do it. This is a little Air app that I'll include with the blog post that you can download. You'll see that it's just a little cache.manifest generator. I'll say right now, this is unsupported. I just wrote it real fast, so there's probably ways that you can break it. But all you have to do with this is just pick the directory that you have your output in. So here's the directory where I put all my Captivate output. The output file name, I want it to be cache.manifest. I'm going to hit generate. I'm going to save it into that folder, and it should be done. Now, just to show you what that made, if I open this in my Notepad editor here, you'll see that this file is all the files included in that entire directory structure. including a little version number up here that you can keep changing. So we've got all those files added in, the cache.manifest. I can now come into Dreamweaver and open up, I'm going to refresh my local files here, and open up this index page, and at the top indicate there is a manifest file. It's called cache.manifest. I could have called it captivate.manifest if I wanted to, doesn't matter. And then I mentioned some snippets here that I'm going to copy and paste in to the top just inside this head tag. Here's that thing that says behave like a web app. For the record, there's another metadata element you could put in here that is the color of the status bar. Now what this is referring to, if I go back to my app, you'll notice at the very top here we have a little status bar that's just the top of the iPad, where battery life and all that kind of stuff. Well, this is the color that it would change. It's black, or you can make it white. It's just to help make it look a little nice with what your design is doing. And then there's a few other things that I can put in here. For example, an Apple Touch icon, Apple Startup image, Apple Startup image. These are some imagery. The icon is what will show up on the home screen. These startup images are called splash screens, and they'll show up horizontally or vertically. That's why I have two, based on the orientation of the device. Now, I just need to move my assets into the same folder here, so everything's together, because that's where I said they would be. I've got all of this content in here. I now need to upload it. So if I go to my server, I can upload it. Now this takes a little bit of time, so I actually have these files up here already. I'm going to delete what's currently there, and I've got all these assets in this little final folder that I can copy over, and they will move from that final folder into the main directory, and I can delete that final folder. Magic. They're all up on the server. I didn't have to wait. Now here's one note. I didn't mention this before, but not all servers know what to do with a manifest file. There's a way that you can test to see if your server knows what to do. So if I come to the page that I'm going to try to load up, which is blog.easlesolutions.com/cp, and I actually type in cache.manifest to try to browse to that file, as long as you can see the text that's in here, it means that it's working, that your server knows what to do with it. If you don't get it, or it tries to download it, your server doesn't know what to do with a manifest file. And there's a couple ways around this. If you just Google manifest MIME type, that's what you actually need to do, is you need to add a MIME type for a manifest file. And now this is something you might want to have your server person do if you don't know what MIME types are. Another way that will sometimes work, depending on your server, is you make a file called htaccess, but you got to put a dot in front of it, so .htaccess. You put this file in the root of your server, so blog.easlesolutions.com. I'd put it right in that root, and I would add the MIME type text cache manifest for manifest files. Again, computer geeky server stuff, but something that you need to have on your server so that it knows what a manifest file is. If you've got that working and you just want to test it one more time to make sure it's going to work, here's a little trick that you can do in Google Chrome. If I hit F12, Google Chrome will reveal the console. Okay, this console here shows you all the content, or it's a way of debugging websites that computer or web developers use. If I actually go to my home page, or my page that I actually have my content, and go to it, you'll see that it will load in the cache from here. Now, it didn't actually list all the files because my cache hasn't been updated. This is the same thing as I did when I tested it. But just to show you, if I actually go back to that manifest file and I change the version to, say, version 1.2, and I go back to Dreamweaver and I update this, so I've changed something in this file. Now that this file's different, When I reload the page, watch my console. You'll see this console is now re-downloading all the assets because that text at the top changed. So it's like, oh, there must be something different. I'll re-download everything. So this is a way that you can verify that all of the content works and will cache. If you get any errors in here, you'll want to fix those errors before you try to test it on your device because it's not going to work. So I'm going to go back to my device. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my shortcut that's on here because I don't need that anymore, and I'm going to make sure that I don't have it running or cached or anything like that. Secondly, I need to turn back on my Wi-Fi because I need to download these new files to begin with. Got the Wi-Fi turned on. I'm going to go back to that web page and refresh it. Now I'm seeing the Captivate content come up, and you can see the bottom bar is actually clipped a little bit because Safari's adding all this extra browser Chrome, and that's not what I want. But luckily, when I download this to my home screen, it's going to launch as a web app, and I won't have to worry about that. So I'm going to tell it to add to my home screen. See how it's pulling in that icon now? So I'm going to get a nice branded icon. I can hit add. Here it shows up on my home screen. Because of the brightness, it's a little hard to see, but you can see it's a little Captivate icon. Now I'm going to launch this, and I want you to watch the screen that pops up first. You're going to see a splash screen. So that nice branded splash screen, I can hit play. As I said, this first image doesn't show up because of it's a little known issue with the tool, but once you get to the second slide, and any slide after that, it works. And it's playing, but again, I have internet right now. You can see my little icon in the upper left-hand corner. So I want to see what happens if I don't have internet. So I'm going to go turn off my Wi-Fi. Again, just to really test this, I'm going to kill the running version of it so that the next time I go to it, it's going to be a brand new instance. Launch it, and I don't get any warning about the internet. I can test my file, let it play through the slides that we have. You can see everything fits on screen nicely because I don't have that extra Chrome at the top. I come to my quiz. You can get this from labs.adobe.com. Correct. Nice. Click anywhere to continue. Currently, it only supports Windows, but that will hopefully change when the final version is out in the wild. I passed my quiz. I'm going to continue to the last slide, which isn't all that interesting. It's just a caption saying thank you. So there I've taken a very simple thing to add into any web page, just some code to copy paste that makes it behave offline. As I said, there's a few steps in this process still, so this will hopefully get easier when the tool is more tightly integrated with Captivate. But I think this is a pretty exciting way to be able to start creatively creating offline content if you're just a web developer and you don't know anything fancy about Apple developer licenses or mobile applications. It's just a quick and simple way to create this kind of content.